this is neshama. This is where we care for the life of the soul. So we're going to get started right away, and the first thing we're going to talk about is just our movement. We're going to open up with our movement today. And the movement we're going to look at is in the neck, jaw, throat area. This is often one that is neglected. So we're just going to start with a couple of deep breaths. And then relax the jaw downward as best you can, just straight down, just relaxed, not trying to open it hard or anything, just a relaxed open. And then we're just going to gently push the chin back into the neck. Just gently push it back while it's slightly open. And from there, we're going to just rest our neck backward. And then forward again. And it helps to relax these muscles here that sometimes get clenched under stress and tension and difficulty, and so we're just going to relax that. So let's do that again. Let's take a deep breath and gently press the jaw into the neck with your mouth being slightly open, and then lean the head backward while still pressing a little. And then back forward again. Okay, now without pressing the chin, just relax the hands open and all the way back, trying to touch the shoulder blades together. And opening the jaw wide. So sometimes when you do your stretching and opening exercises, just make sure you allow the jaw to relax and open a bit. It just helps to relieve some of the pressure that we oftentimes take in the jaw. So that's our opener. So today we're going to be talking about something very important where our well-being is concerned, and that has to do with loving ourselves. A lot of times, especially in church, we talk about loving other people and what that looks like, but we haven't really learned what it looks like to love ourselves. So that's what I'm going to talk about today. And the first thing we're going to start with is our essential oil. And the oil is Ylang, Y-L-A-N-G. Some people call it Lang Lang, some people call it Ylang. Well, however they say it, it's a beautiful oil of the Kananga flower. And sometimes you'll see it in ingredients as Kananga. And this oil is very special. I'll just show you that label so you can see it. Pretty blue. And we're going to put that on. I put it on my wrist, my throat. It helps me to smell it, and it's pretty potent, and gives you a really, it's almost like a perfumey scent. But Ylang is is a very powerful oil emotionally. So the first thing that we're going to talk about with Ylang is some of the benefits that it does. And these are all benefits that they have found through research. So it isn't just hearsay. A lot of the benefits of things are sometimes just old wives' tales, but these have been done research on. So one of the first things that it does is it boosts your mood. So if we're talking about self-love, a lot of times if you're in self-hatred or self-recrimination, it makes you feel so sad, and you can get very depressed. And Ylang Ylang is a good starting point for helping to get you out of that. And I say starting point because it's not the only thing to do. You know, essential oils are a help. They're a support. They're not the only thing, and they're not everything. So when you talk about helping your system or your soul, it's really good to recognize that the soul is multifaceted. So we deal with it in multiple ways. So essential oils are one of those ways. Okay, so some of the benefits that they've studied are boosting the mood, reducing depression, alleviating anxiety. The Ylang Ylang oil is very calming. It's almost instantly calming. It actually can lower the blood pressure, decrease the heart rate. It also repels flying insects. Great. And it kills bug larvae. So it's a really interesting oil that way. It also, if you put it on the scalp, it can stimulate the production of oil on the skin or the scalp. So if you've got dry skin, that's a really good thing. So I found this Ylang Ylang lotion made by Christina Mazer that has got Ylang Ylang in it, and it's really good. It just helps stimulate your own natural production of oils in your hands, your skin, and your scalp. Other things that Ylang Ylang has been used for are stomach distress, rheumatism, gout, malaria, headache, and pneumonia. Now, those are historical uses, not necessarily tested, but they have been used for that. So in the handouts, which I will put a link to in the description, you can read the rest of the things that I've got here, and I also put the link to the website where I got some of this information, so you can look up more if you'd like. Okay, so the stone we're going to talk about today is one of my favorites, but I love all the stones, but this is one of my favorites. This one speaks to me. This is kind of my color. I'm kind of wearing that color today. So this stone is the Celestite crystal. Celestite. And it comes in different colors, but the one I have here today is a beautiful sky blue. It's just so beautiful and bright. And it's clear. It's a little bit opaque, but yeah, it's like a beautiful, almost like you can see the sky through it. Anyway, it's beautiful. So this crystal is all about helping you to find your inner balance and a perfect sense of peace. And it's a stone to turn to when you're struggling with dysfunctional relationships. It also helps to clear your mind of anger, resentment, and lingering bad moods. So, I've chosen these two things, the oil and the stone, to work together to help us to feel better about ourselves. Would you go and see if you can find her? She's supposed to be here. So she knows where we're at. Okay, so this gentle and gorgeous stone is known also for its spiritual powers. It helps the body flush out toxins, and it's particularly useful in helping the body heal from stress-related disorders. Whether it's digestion or acne breakouts, Celestite's touch is like an organic balm to the body. but it also enhances your ability to understand spiritual things. So it's a really great thing to start with for our self-love. Okay, so now we're just gonna get into the nuts and bolts of self-love, loving yourself. You know, I don't know that I've ever heard a lesson or a talk about self-love. How to do it, what it looks like, what it feels like, where you get it, how to practice it, you know, it just isn't out there. I just have never seen it. So that's what we're going to talk about. And, no? Would you call her on my phone, see where she's at? She should be here by now. We're waiting for somebody to come, so that's kind of why I'm a little bit off balance here, but we'll get it together.
You're correct.
Okay. So she's in my messenger, and I just called her, so it should be there as a call also. Okay, so how to love yourself. So the first principle I want to talk about when loving yourself is learning to recognize your inner voices. A lot of times people struggle with self-love because they feel like they hear things in their mind and they're not sure which ones to believe. So they talk about, well, I'm not sure if that was my voice saying that, or they'll say things like,
Or somebody else.
yeah, somebody said this to me, or something happens to them and they say, oh, I'm just so stupid, or I just can never do that, you know, and there's always these voices going on either in their head or vocally themselves. And so the first part of self-love for me is recognizing the voices that are being spoken in our lives. So when anything happens to me, or whenever I'm just talking about doing something or wondering about something, I have recognized 3 distinct voices, okay? And the first one we'll call God, the second one we'll call the adversary, and the third one we'll call the self.
That's where we get it from.
And all 3 of those are inside of you somewhere. Those voices go on in your mind, and a lot of times they're so jumbled you can't tell who's speaking and which one to believe. And a lot of times I hear people say, I don't know if that was my voice, or if it was God's, or if it was the adversary. I just don't know. So then they don't know what to believe, so they don't really believe anything, or they just believe the lowest common denominator, the worst thing.
Described anything, they just wander.
They just wander about, and they might believe this for a minute and that for a minute, but they can't really settle on one thing. So, let's, did you try calling? Okay, so in my experience, what I've learned how to do is to separate those voices and determine which one is speaking. So let's say, for example, that you've done something and you kind of fell on your face about it. It was difficult, and you tripped, and things didn't turn out well, and maybe you got hurt, and maybe you're crying now. Okay, so you're sitting in your chair and you're crying, and you're thinking to yourself, oh, I just never do anything right. Okay, so when that happens, it's important to stop all the voices that are speaking. And usually when you've had a bad experience like that, and then you're very emotional, and then that voice that comes that makes you cry, the one that says, I'm so stupid, I never do anything right, and then you start crying, that one overwhelms everything else, and it's really difficult to sort things out at that point.
To listen to those wonderful sounds that you always tell everybody to listen to.
Right, right.
What are they
So
called
it's
again?
solfeggio frequencies.
Oh.
Yeah. So it's really good to stop at that point and just like be like a judge and say, okay, order in the court, stop everything. We're going to listen to the three voices, and we're going to take them in order. Now, your system is built on this order. So when you stop everything from happening and just sit down and say, okay, so what is the truth about this? And you ask yourself that question. That's the first thing to do. What is the truth? Then the person who has the right to speak first is always God. Okay? And it's really good at this point to get a paper and pencil. And when you stop everything and say, okay, what is the truth? And an idea comes into your mind, it's good to write that down. So let's say, for instance, you, in this thing that you've done, let's say you tried to help somebody, and they slammed the door in your face, and you dropped your plate of cookies, and your plate broke, and you got to your car, and you were crying. And you just felt like a failure, and you felt like you couldn't do anything right, and nothing was going the way it was supposed to, and you were trying to do a nice thing, and they didn't want it. Okay, so that's the scenario. Now you're sitting in your car and you're crying, and you said, okay, boom, 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 order in the court. What's the truth about this situation? Okay, so let's now suppose that the truth is being spoken. So if you were looking at another person in this situation and that had happened to them, what would you say would be the truth about the situation? Let's say you were seeing it from bird's eye view and watching this person go through it. What's the truth about it?
They were serving another person.
That's right. So they were serving, and that's a good thing. You were doing what's right. And God loves you for doing what's right. He loves you all the time anyway, even if you don't do what's right. So God still loves you. Your parents still love you. Life is still good. You were doing what's right, and that's something to be happy about. Because when you have good motives and you do what is right, and then one more thing, you were prompted to do it.
Mm-hmm.
Okay?
Timing.
So following a prompting, that's also huge. So then we need more truth, because now we know all of that, but what's the rest of the story? So now we say, but I fell on my face, I broke the plate, they slammed the door, and everything's bad. Okay, that's the second voice that will come after we've heard that first truth. The second voice will say all of that. That's the adversary saying, I'm terrible. I can never do anything right. They slammed the door. Life is bad. I never do this, etc.
He likes to take the focus
Right.
off the good you did.
Right. He takes the focus off the good and he points it to, whatever
secondary.
happened that was maybe uncomfortable. Okay. And then the self is going to be the third voice, and the self is going to come in and say, well, yeah, you're probably right. I'm so bad. And then you're going to bring in all the past things that looked like that, where maybe you failed, where maybe something didn't go the way you wanted it to do, or maybe somebody rejected you. You're going to bring in all of those other things, and that's going to make you really depressed at that point. Okay, so that's generally how this happens. And so what you have to do again, after you've heard those three voices, is boom, 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 order in the court again, and we're going to find out what the truth is more. Okay? So the truth is, God is right. God is always right, and his voice is the right one. So that is the one we're going to choose to believe. I'm going to choose to believe God at this point. But maybe we need to wait and get just a little bit more information about it and say, well, okay, what's more of the truth? What's the truth about the falling and the rejection? Okay, so then it's really important to listen again. So order in the court, we're going to listen to again and say, what is the truth? And the truth is, and at that point, God will probably say something like, they were probably having a really, really bad day.
First thing I
And-
thought of, and that was just timing, you know.
Right? And if you fell and broke the plate, maybe God was helping you to recognize just how bad they feel so that maybe you could have more compassion, because maybe they just broke their own plate and are feeling bad about it. So instead of sitting in your car crying and saying, I will never go back, maybe the answer at that point, maybe the more truth that we get at that point is that we need to go back and knock on the door again and offer our love instead of our cookies. And so if that prompting comes after asking for more truth, instead of believing the adversary's lie, which takes us into pain and misery, but believing the truth of God, which takes us into compassion and joy, then we have another decision to make. Do we go back in, even though it looks like we've been rejected, or do we go home and nurse our wounds and say, poor me, and then never go back? So that's just an example of what can happen when you stop, bang the gavel, and say, order in the court, and let the truth speak, and then choose to believe that first voice. And you know which voice to believe, because believing it will bring you joy. And you know which voice is lying, because believing that will cause you to feel more pain, more self-pity, and more anguish
God
about the
knows the
situation.
desires of our hearts. He knows
Yes.
exactly where our heart is with all that we do.
That's right. And he will never judge us harshly. And what his more truth will give us is peace. So then what I do is I make a covenant of peace, and I say, I will believe your words, what you just said, because that brings me joy, and that's my choice. We do have the choice to believe the second voice, which is the one that brings us more misery. But I don't choose that. And then the third voice, which is perhaps my voice or the voice of my ego, is sometimes my pride saying, well, they don't like me, I don't want to go back, you know. And that can sometimes get in the way. But that will also cause you to feel more self-pity and more pride and more separation from the people around you. And those are indicators of which voice is speaking. How you feel is the indicator of which voice is speaking. God's voice will always bring peace and joy. Peace and joy are the fruits of the Spirit, and the Spirit is truth. So when you ask for the truth, he has the right to speak first, and he will, if you let him. The second voice is always the one of doubt and fear and anger and frustration and misery, and it will bring you to that place. And then the self usually sides with the adversary because the ego self is the natural man, an enemy to God. So then it's a question of getting yourself to come over and swallow its pride and say, no, we are going to believe God because we've already made that promise to believe God.
And he knows whom we will serve.
That's right.
He knows. And why serve the adversary? He snags and drags you right down to empty nothingness.
That's right. So I'll tell you a really quick way to release some of the negativity that can come on you when you've had a moment of, say, momentary failure or falling or something happens. A really quick way to release that from you is to get in the dirt. play in the dirt. Whether you have a little plot of garden or whether you just get a bag of dirt from the store, playing in the dirt, put it in a bowl and play with it. Plant something in it, dig in it, go to a park and dig in the dirt. Do something in the dirt. It just has a very powerful cleansing effect of negative emotions, negative feelings, and allow yourself to do that even before you hold that court and say, okay, we're gonna deal with this whatever difficult situation after I play in the dirt, or after I hold this stone for a few minutes and put on my Ylang. So Ylang is the oil of the inner child. It's a powerful remedy for the heart.
Actual heart, huh?
It reconnects an individual with the child self and the pure, simple ways of the heart. It's also a powerful remedy for releasing emotional trauma from the past. So that's why I chose Ylang. It's because it's a good helper to remove some of those things. And a lot of times when you've got something going on today, it's basically an echo from the past. Your past can keep repeating itself in your life until today, so it feels like you've never left that first traumatic experience.
Is that Ylang?
Ylang helps you to go back there and look at the first one and release it, so that all of the others can be released, so that you can be free from it. So some of the signs of the absence of self-love, or the looking like you don't have self-love. Some of the signs of that are being withdrawn, being always stressed, being hypercritical of yourself or others, being brusque with others, feeling untrustworthy, self-doubt, thinking more about your failures than about your accomplishments, only following but never leading, feeling unloved or unlovable.
We just need to be more anchored with God. We are children of God.
Yes, and people often say that you're a child of God, but that's about as far as they go in self-love. And that's why I'm giving this class, because I wanted to go beyond that. Knowing you're a child of God is one thing. You can know it right here. But until you know it here, it's still just in your mind. And that's another reason for using the Ylang, because it helps us to go from our mind into our heart. So if we're having any of these symptoms of the lack of self-love, then that's an indicator that perhaps there has been something in our past that is still speaking that second voice to us. That, okay, sometimes when you're a child and you hear the voice of the adversary in your mind and you believe it, it stays there. It can stay there for a long, long time. And that's a really good reason why to go back to those child experiences, because it gives you the opportunity to help that child mind of yours to recognize the three voices and then choose to believe the first voice, the voice of God, the voice of truth, the voice of peace and joy and love, that sometimes as a child we don't know how to believe because we have the voice of our parents and our siblings and our teachers and our coaches and our life sometimes hammering us down so hard that we believe it, even if it's coming from the wrong voice. So in my experience, I've had to go back to many of those childhood experiences and look at them with my adult eyes. And Ylang is a really powerful tool for doing that. I would put on that essential oil, and then I would close my eyes and imagine myself in that place of pain. So I'm going to describe to you one place of pain that I did find that helped me to, that I was allowed to heal from that. So when I was about 6, I was in school, and we were getting ready to do the play, the Christmas play. And we were all very excited, of course, and I was very nervous, and we were rehearsing one day, and we were up on the stage rehearsing, and the teacher was in front of us, I remember, and it was very stressful for me because I really get some pretty serious performance anxiety, and so as I was up on the stage at that young age, and we were practicing, suddenly I felt like I had to go to the bathroom. But I didn't know how to say it. I didn't know how to stop the rehearsal and say, I have to go. I was too afraid to do that. Would you call her, please? I was too afraid to stop the rehearsal to go to the bathroom. And so I was in pain for quite a while. And eventually I couldn't hold it. And
It was a long rehearsal.
yeah, and the teacher became angry with me.
Oh, gee.
And she sent me home.
That's terrible.
And my mom was angry at me. And the thing that came out of that for me, when I went back there, because I didn't even want to remember it. I didn't want to think about it. It was just so embarrassing to me. But when I did have the courage to go back there, with the help of Ylang, I went back into my mind again, in that mindset, and I visited that place, and suddenly I heard in my own mind, I hate myself. And
Just because you had to be excused, I got upset.
I never had heard those words come out of my mouth, and I never thought that I felt that way about myself. But in that moment, I hated myself. And it was still there. That was still inside me, from clear back there. And what I learned is that when children go through trauma, that is the go-to thought. When you get abused, when you get hurt, when you have trouble, when you have trauma, the natural self says, I hate this that's happening, therefore I hate myself for being here and having it happen to me. It's automatic, and it was there. And so seeing that was a shock to me, to my adult self. And I wept. I wept tears of embarrassment and shame and fear and doubt and worry.
And your own mother,
And-
she didn't know the full story.
And then I invited the first voice in, which is God. I said, okay, order in the court now. We're going to find out the truth. And the first thing that voice said to me was, it was not your fault. So I had blamed myself for being too stupid or not brave enough or something, I thought I wasn't good enough. That's why it happened. And the first thing he said was, it was not your fault. And immediately I just felt a huge relief, a huge burden lift off my shoulders. It was not my fault. So I didn't need to hate myself anymore for it happening. It wasn't my fault. I had a condition in my bladder that made it impossible for me to hold it. I couldn't have. And it was not my fault. And secondly, he said that your mother was under similar stress. She was struggling with her marriage, with her life, and I was just one more difficult circumstance in her life. And that allowed me to forgive her for being angry at me. And being able to forgive myself and my mother and know that it wasn't my fault and that she didn't hate me because of it was all the peace that I needed, so that I could take that experience and say, I'm glad I went through that, because through that I learned to love God more and to know that He was there with me and that it wasn't my fault, and that I can love myself even if I make mistakes. Even if things happen that are embarrassing, I can still love myself. That's a really important thing to know in your life, and I now know that. So now when I look back on that experience, I don't hate it and I don't hate myself. I'm not embarrassed by it, and I forgive my mother, and all of that is something I can be grateful for. So we have to be able to look back at everything in our past with gratitude. And going back there and healing it with the truth is the way to do that.
Every experience.
Every experience.
Seeks to teach us something.
Yes. And so Ylang is a really powerful way that helps us to learn those things. Okay, so there are a couple of movies that I recommend, and they're in the handouts. The 5 People You Meet in Heaven, You Can't Take It With You, It's a Wonderful Life, and August Rush.
I love that. I just love that.
Yes, and it's because it teaches us how to love ourselves.
And never give up.
Right, and so as you go through your past experiences, use these movies to help trigger you to remember things, to be able to look at them with new eyes. Take that first voice back there and look at them with new eyes. Okay, so now for the rest of the time, I wanted to talk about 3 more ways to love ourselves. Love ourselves in the present, in the past, and in the future. Now, those, maybe you haven't thought about loving yourself past, present, and future, but the truth is knowledge of things as they are, as they were, and as they are to come. So gaining the truth, or using this first voice, is about the past, present, and future. So that's what we're going to discuss a little bit now. So we'll start with how to love your present. So first of all, it's about taking responsibility for who you are now. It's really, really easy to blame our past, our people, our circumstances, our childhood, our life, our money, our bishop, our church, our world. It's really easy to do that.
So it was something about the present, you said being the present. What did you say at first?
I said how to love yourself in the present, or
How to love yourself in the present, accept the gifts that God has entrusted to everyone.
Right.
That's what gets us through every time.
That's
we
right.
need to recognize He's really hugging us, and
He's
we
right there.
don't always open our arms
That's
to
right.
give it back.
Very good. Yes. Okay, so as you take responsibility for your life now, not blaming anyone else, not your past, not your siblings, not your anything, nothing else is to blame, just looking at yourself and say, I take responsibility for my life now. I will make my choices to bring into my life everything I desire. So that taking responsibility is taking the reins. It's saying, I am who I am, and I choose to be who I choose to be, and I am the victim of no one. No one.
Just push the delete button on any negativity. Push that delete button.
Right, and that's what Ylang is about. It's about allowing us to delete negativity from our past and turn it into positivity.
Right.
And it's not just ignoring the things that are happening to us, but it's taking responsibility. It's saying, I'm responsible now. I don't give that away to anyone else. So that also means, if you're living now, that you only look at the past if you're going to heal it, forgive it, and bring the truth to it so you can release it. That's the only reason for dealing with the past,
I
is
go
to
into
heal
the
it.
past with my children, they like to reminisce. So that's my fun part of the past.
Yes, fun part is great if you're reminiscing, but only visit the past if you're going to heal it and bring joy there.
Yeah, that's what we do.
Okay? So if it is healed, you'll be at peace and still and quiet about it. If it's not healed, there'll be anguish, there'll be regret, there'll be pain about it. And that's how you can tell if something's been healed. If it keeps coming up in your memory and you keep talking about it and it keeps reminding you of hurts today, then that's an indicator that there's some pain back there that might need to be healed.
Yeah, they need to learn their deal too. They need to learn
Right.
their lessons, so we just have to let go of it.
So listen to your thoughts and your word patterns. They'll reveal the hurts of the past. So if you're talking a lot about the past, there's generally a hurt back there that needs to be looked at. So, number 1, live now, accept now, be responsible for you and only you. Number 2, practice daily self-care. This is about now. Love yourself enough to care for yourself, take care of yourself, read, pray, ponder, listen to good music, listen to motivational talks and affirmations, eat what you love what you eat, give thanks to God, be with yourself, love yourself diligently. And those are the things that it generally looks like.
And then you give the goodness of how you feel to
And
others.
yeah, then you can emanate that to others. But if you don't have love in yourself, you cannot love anyone or anything else. You can do things for them, but love is about what you are and
Not
what you
putting up
feel.
with any kind of use, subtle or otherwise.
Right, and if you don't love yourself, there is no love you can give to anyone else, because love begins right here. So, and number 3, live by inspiration, not by the clock, not by other people's demands or expectations, not by our fears or our worries. Sometimes we have we come in contact with those things, the clock and other people's worries and concerns, but we can live our lives by the inspiration that we feel, rather than by the pressures that other people and the clock would put upon us.
And never apologize for the gifts God has entrusted to you. We've all been given different gifts.
I really like that affirmation, and I wrote that down, and it's in the handouts. It says, I choose to stop apologizing for being me.
I
That's
wrote
a
that years and
huge
years
part
ago. That's
of
the only way I could have
self-love.
written the book I wrote.
Yes.
Took me
And the
across
4th
borders.
one about loving yourself now is allow others in your life the freedom you wish for yourself. Give love, emanate love, be love for yourself and others. Think less about what you're doing to show love and more about who you're being and what you're believing and thinking. For it's out of your beliefs and your thoughts
It must come
that
natural.
your fruits come. So think more about what you're believing and thinking rather than about just what you're doing, because it's the beliefs and the thoughts that create who you are, and out of that will grow the love and the truth and the trust that you have. So actions aren't love. God is love. It's a being.
He
It's a
knows
being.
exactly what's going on here before
Right.
what goes on here.
Okay, so how to love your future. Number 1, plant seeds now that you wish to see in your future. And by planting seeds, I mean
Thoughts.
plant thoughts, exactly. You plant the thoughts and the beliefs. And that's really about that first voice. When you hear that first voice say, you are loved, you are good, you're doing what's right, you keep the commandments, I love you. When you hear that, you choose to believe that, and you plant all your hopes and dreams within that atmosphere. then you are growing your future
Knowing-
in that love.
Knowing we're offspring of God, how can we insult anybody, put anybody down, subtle or intentional, otherwise? How can anybody do that to somebody else? The creation of
Including
God.
ourselves.
Right.
Including ourselves. And that's, so many people, I was one of them. When I was growing up, I didn't love the song, I Am a Child of God.
Because you probably didn't feel it.
Because I didn't feel like I had a home of parents kind and dear. I didn't feel like I was loved. I felt unloved.
I felt both ways.
And that
Didn't.
and that's why I felt like there needed to be something that would take us beyond just that simple knowing I am a child of God, but what more can I know about it? So I needed more truth, basically.
Demonstration.
I needed to know
Action.
more than just that I was his child.
Excuse me.
Because just being somebody's child isn't enough. You have to know who he is to know who you are.
And it's reinforced by the way people treat each other, accept each other in families.
Yeah, it can be, or it can make it more painful if there is
If there
no
isn't
love.
somebody to look up to
That's
and
right.
get your strength with,
Right.
and up and share your strength. It doesn't matter what age we are, we all learn something from somebody.
But if all the things that people call love in your life are painful, then you can't love yourself because everything is pain,
You just
and
have to
even,
allow them to grow.
you don't know what love is yet.
Yeah.
And that was my problem. I didn't know what love was. So when they said you're a child of God and that's love and your family is love, I'm like, well, then I just want to die because
Yeah,
it's
you're so
all
cute.
horrible. And so I had to learn more, and I had to learn all of these things. Okay, so first of all, plant the seeds now that you wish to see in your future. Plant the thoughts, the beliefs, and choose to believe that in that better life. You may have whatever you have now, but choosing to believe in something better is a godly attribute. And choosing to believe that first voice is part of that. Okay, and the second thing, dream. Dare to dream your ideal future and trust and believe in its fulfillment. More about planting the seeds. The third thing, do hard things now that will ensure happiness and peace in your future. Care for yourself, eat good food, clean up your relationships, learn self-restraint,
Self-control, self-discipline.
self-control.
Yeah.
Planting a garden, is that easy? No, but when you plant a garden and weed it and work with it, then eventually you get the fruit. And that's how your life is. If you want a better life, you start now by planting those seeds and doing the hard work of trusting and trusting and trusting through time so that you can bring about the fruit of those dreams and those hopes and desires. The fourth thing, give thanks now for what is. Even if it looks like the worst thing ever, give thanks for it religiously. And we trust God in this, and he gave us this, but it's not that easy to do. When you look around you and you see pain and difficulty and heartache, you want to just complain about it instead of give thanks for it. But God literally says give thanks for everything. That's the good, the bad, and the ugly. That's everything.
My brother said, gratitude is the mother of all virtues.
And it's not only the mother of all virtues, but it's the mother and the father of your new happy life. So if you want those hopes and dreams to be accomplished, the quickest motor that gets them there is the motor of gratitude. You take whatever you've got and you say, thank you, God, for this, even if it's a pile of manure. Gardens grow well in a pile of manure. That's a fact. So it's okay if your life is a pile of manure right now. You just give thanks for it. And once you give thanks, that gives God the opening to show you why you can be grateful for it, why it's a good thing,
He
and
wants
how it
us
can
to
turn
have.
to your good.
He wants us to have every good thing. So
That's right.
He gave
And
us
he
something
is
to work
giving
with.
it to us But sometimes that first thing he gives us looks like a pile of manure, and we go, I don't want that. I want every good thing. Why aren't you giving it to me? And he's like, well, every garden has to start with manure, so give thanks for it.
And he has faith, so much faith in us that we
Yes.
can and will if we truly
Right.
seek it.
And the last thing, believe God. He holds the future. Trust him. Promises to God are our best insurance for a happy future. So even if you can't, if you don't feel like you trust him to bring about your best future out of this pile of manure, do it anyway. Ask your heart to trust him. And what I had to do was say, okay, I will trust you for a whole week. For a whole week, I will not listen to that other voice. I will not even entertain it for a second. I will, if it starts to come in, I'll just say, no, 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 no. I'm trusting God this week. I'm trusting God this week. If you do that, even for a week, he will show you the fruits of that. It's like planting a little thing of spinach. Spinach comes up very quickly and you can eat it right away.
That's nice.
And so doing that for a week is like planting spinach. You can get a little bit of results from that that will bring about something good in your life, and then it might enable you to trust for 2 weeks or a month or 6 months or a year until it becomes a habit. Okay, so we've already talked about how you love your past, and that's by going back to every painful experience and bringing the truth there, bringing God there, bringing the light there.
Now, what was the topic today? Self-love?
Loving yourself. And you love your present by being grateful now. And you love your future by planting the seeds of your new and happy life.
And we always need something to look forward to.
Yes, we do. We do. We are eternal beings. So that's the beginning of self-love. More self-love comes the more you learn about God, because you are a part of God. And now that brings me to the scripture that we're going to mention today. In John chapter 17, verses 21 and 22 and 23, he says, that they all may be one, as thou, Father, art in me, and I in thee, that they also may be one in us, that the world may believe that thou hast sent me, and the glory which thou gavest me I have given them, that they may be one even as we are one, I in them, and thou in me, that they may be made perfect in one.
When he turned around.
Now, that's a pretty big concept, him in us. And that's why I say, the more you learn about God, and the more you learn who he is and how he works, the more you're able to love yourself, because that is you. That's what's in you. And it's really important that you learn it, and as you learn it, you believe it. So don't just read it, but when you read it, believe it. It's an act of spiritual catharsis when you ask your heart to believe what you read. Yes.
The way we treat people speaks and tells the whole story. The way we consistently treat people tells us who we are, and if we truly love God, we will be careful with the way we treat people. Everybody has different degrees of sensitivity and receptivity, so again, the way we treat each other confirms who we are every day.
Well, and that can only grow out of how much you love yourself.
Right, so treating people with kindness, it means that you feel good about this.
And vice versa. You will only treat people with kindness if you love yourself.
Exactly.
And so
How
if
can
you
we
see
not love
someone,
ourselves?
if
Because
you
we're
see
part of
someone who
them.
is not loving
Uh-huh.
or seems to be treating people with no kindness,
You just
you
retract it.
know absolutely that they don't love themselves.
Mhm.
They can't love themselves. and therefore they cannot love others.
Too many compare themselves, and they need to spend time improving themselves and cancel out comparing
Right.
themselves. I think that is a big, big weed in many people's gardens, because they have not truly acknowledged that God wants the very best for us, and He's excited for us when we do well. I know
Yes.
that. And we bring the best out in each other when the honest, true, sincere compliment is given. That's how I feel about that. It's a great
Thank
class.
you.
Great class.
Okay, so a couple of affirmations on the list that I have in the description. I accept myself unconditionally. Unconditionally. Say it, say it, say it. I accept myself unconditionally. Practice that every day. It will change how you feel about yourself. I am at peace with where I am. I embrace who I am. I am enough. I take responsibility for who I am. I release the need to judge myself negatively. My life is a gift. I will use this gift with confidence, joy, and exuberance. I approve of myself. I approve of myself. I love myself deeply and fully. I am worthy of love and joy. I am worthy of infinite compassion. I choose to stop apologizing for being me.
Exactly.
I feel beautiful. I am beautiful. I will focus on the bright side. I follow my own expectations, not the expectations of others. My inner beauty shines brightly. So, thank you all for being here today. It's been a lovely day. Thank you for coming. Thank you for being here, and have a great April day. I love you.
It's my mother's birthday in heaven. That was a great lesson. A great lesson.